Hi, I'm Dr. Isaac Tourgeman, faculty at Albizu University. This year, for International Stress Awareness Week, I want to talk about coping as we get back to our lives without our masks. Now, these last 2 years, we can describe as being quite stressful, as we've had to contend with a pandemic that's affected multiple aspects of our lives, including the loss of many loved ones. But as we mourn all these losses, we also have to contend with getting back to our everyday lives, which means transitioning back to workplace settings as well as schools. Now, not everyone is going back to the offices and schools. Some individuals are still staying remote, and while others are going back to the offices that had left and haven't seen in the past 2 years. So what does this mean for stress? Well, first and foremost, stress is a very natural thing. It's something we all feel, and stress is not always bad, and that's very important to know. I often tell my students that stress oftentimes just reminds us that it's something that matters. So we typically don't stress about things that are not important to us, but stress about what is. Now, what may be important at one moment in our lives may not be at other moments, so that's always something important to remember, because at any point in time, something that we give a lot of value to, later on in life, we may look back to and wonder, why was it so important to us to begin with? Now, these last few years has kind of been a readjustment as to what our values and our needs are. And that's kind of where I want to start with. When facing stress, it's good to remind ourselves, what is it that's important? What is it that we value? Because that's going to be what frames us as we contend with the stress. As we deal with changes, as we contend with difficulties and obstacles, it's always good to remind ourselves, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And what are the things that matter? So when faced with a moment of stress, think to yourself, how does this impact my needs? How does it impact my values? Now, not all values are created equal, and people give different importance to different values. So I'm not here to tell you what is the things that you should value, but more so ask you to think about the things that you already do value and wonder if your behaviors and your thoughts are aligned with those values. Now, going back to stress is a natural thing. Your body is meant to experience stress anytime it deals with change or contends with any pressure. Stress is what gets you through it. Your body kicks into this automatic response in which chemicals and hormones are released into your body to get it to react, to deal with the situation. That's a good thing. It's what keeps you alive when the lion's about to attack you. Now, in modern day occurrences, some people are truly experiencing safety concerns on a daily basis, while others are contending with everyday stressors that still target the same system. So while maybe being in a war zone, it's typical to experience high levels of stress, people in their workplace and school settings will still experience high levels of stress, and your body doesn't know the difference. It's still going to release the same hormones and the same chemicals. So what do? Well, the idea is, first we need to pause. And I don't mean if you're in a life-threatening situation that you should just stand still. What I mean is find a way to ground yourself so you can act appropriately, whether it's about survival or preparation for a test or dealing with some work demands. Making sure that you give yourself a way to react, a pause, so you can do the best course of action. This is something we call grounding. And what grounding is to ground yourself in the moment, to kind of center yourself so you're better aware of your surroundings and the situation. Typically, clinicians tell their patients to basically focus on the situation. Breathe in, breathe out, pay attention to what's going on. One exercise that is often used is a mindfulness exercise in which people are asked to basically focus on the breath. Feel it as it goes into your body and out your body. Not so much speed it up or even make it deeper, but focus on the act of breathing. And I do want to say that breathing is kind of where it all starts. Anytime we experience stress, our breathing speeds up, becomes more shallow, and oftentimes we even feel like we're out of breath as we're actually breathing. So do your body a favor and slow down and take a breath. Next is trying to identify what's going on. Pay attention to the situation. Understand your triggers. Acknowledge that you are experiencing stress and then look to see what's causing it. Understanding what's going on, reducing the ambiguity can be helpful. Now, I do want to say that ambiguity is part of many situations in life, and it's natural at times to not know everything that's going on. But our bodies and our minds do like structure. So take a step back, breathe, and then look to see what's causing your stress. Try to identify, as well as pay attention to your reactions. Try to identify the thoughts that you're having. Are you thinking about the future and predicting something that hasn't happened? Are you looking to the past and reliving a memory that has been triggered by a current situation, but maybe is not relevant to what's going on? Are we looking at describing the situation using negative terms and negative words when we don't really have any data to really know how bad it is? These are things that are very natural, but oftentimes cause the stress to be more than what it should be and negatively impact us emotionally, physically, as well as behaviorally. Once you've identified what's going on, well, it's important to act. Now, how should we act? Well, again, if you're in a life or death situation, you act according to preserve your wellness, to keep yourself alive. But when you're in a work setting and it's not so much a life or death, but it's more about execution, well, think about the values that you hold dear. Is it important to you to be someone that is consistent? Is it important for you to be creative? Is it important for you to connect to others? When you act, when you think, evaluate if your actions and thoughts are in line with these values. If they're not, then take a step back and see if you can reframe what's going on. These actions, if they're in line with your values, may not necessarily get rid of the stress altogether, but lead you to a path where you can deal with the stress much, much better. Remember, stress is part of life and it's part of change. Even in the moment where it's something positive, you may feel a little bit of stress. Remember, your heart rate speeds up, your muscles contract, and sometimes you get those butterflies. Well, whether we're seeing a scary movie, dealing with a survival situation, or feeling the feelings associated with positive things such as love and excitement, these are very similar. So remember, stress isn't always bad. It just means that there's something that needs to be done in action. Okay? So again, focus on your values. Now there's one value I want to select, and that's be kind. A very important trait, and it's one that I want to focus on internally and externally. To start with, be kind to others. Oftentimes in moments of stress, we displace our frustration. We're short-tempered, irritable, less patient. We become a little bit more sensitive and things just bother us more. Again, that's a natural way of feeling. But if you acknowledge that that's happening, then we know part of the solution is that be kind. With a lot of my patients that contend with anything from traumatic brain injuries to stroke to depression, anxiety, oftentimes I notice a change when they start focusing on how to help others. It provides a great meaning to what they're going through, but also relieves some of the stress and difficulties that they deal with. And it's a progression I often see even across different severities. So that's important. Look to ways to be kind. It's something that biologically is inherent to us, but we often forget about. Now, there's something else we can't forget is be kind to ourselves. These negative thoughts that we have are often not so kind. We don't oftentimes react to stress with good thoughts about ourselves, but instead we have the bad ones. You're inadequate. You can't do this. It's never going to change. You're not living up to your expectations. That's not so kind. That's not so nice. So focus on being kind to others. Focus on being kind to yourself. Now, a lot of these things are reflexive, and like all things in life, they require practice. But even getting to a point of being negative towards yourself is something that at one point started and then has been practiced. And that's when it becomes automatic, when you practice it enough that you do it without thinking. You can do the same with being kind to yourself. You start off by doing it meaningfully. You pause, take a breath, identify what's going on, name it, assess your values, and then with effort, you be kind to yourself. Say something positive in the midst of stress. You've done this before. You've dealt with worse. You're not alone. You have others and resources. Be kind to others. Know that stress is universal. We all experience it in many different ways. And it doesn't mean that one stress is worse or better than the other. But when we help out each other, we're no longer doing this alone. And that's something I want to bring from these last few years. This notion that sometimes contending with stress is a universal thing. It's very easy to see a lot of negativity and everything that's going on that has happened, but there's also been a lot of positivity as communities have come together, governments have helped out each other, and so forth. And so even in the midst of stress, we can see great growth in communities, in societies, within the individual. It is in those moments when we're challenged, when we deal with things that we don't expect or sometimes even want, when we grow the most. Remember, during puberty, growing pains, when your bones are growing and you're becoming the person you're going to be, that's when we experience pain, that's when we experience growth and progress. Life is no different. So remember, with stress, with pressure, we can become better versions of ourselves and help others do the same. So this year for International Stress Awareness Week, let's focus on that. Let's focus on the main points of this discussion right now. Stop and take a breath. Identify what's going on. Name it. Give it a tangible meaning. Be kind to yourself and others. Doing this will help you contend with the stress that comes your way and will also allow you to identify when it's positive and when it's negative. And remember, as someone that I like to often quote has said, on the road to success, there's many failures, but never allow yourself to be defined by any individual action or failure. So remember that. If you're making errors, that means you're trying. So when we stop trying is when it really gets difficult. All right, so I guess at this point, I'm gonna stop this discussion. Hopefully I'll see you all again. So again, my name is Dr. Isaac Tourgeman, faculty at Albizu University. And here I am hoping that we can all cope with an ever-changing world together, as well as within ourselves.